It would be an understatement to say that Fallout's pre-war America housed some of the greatest minds the universe had seen. People like business tycoon Robert House, Vault-Tec scientist Stanislaus Braun, General Constantine Chase, Captain Roger Maxon, toymaker Arlen Glass, and investigative journalist Quinn Carter all come to mind. Through their work, these people were able to bring significant changes to pre-war society. But what about those who were born after the world had succumbed to nuclear devastation? Who was bringing progress to what remained of society? Well, let's go over a few of them today. This is what I believe to be 5 of Fallout's greatest post-war minds. Number 1. Catherine. We're going to start off this list with a character that we never actually meet in the games, and that is the Lone Wanderer's mother, Catherine. Catherine was an esteemed scientist and devout Christian. It's mentioned early on in Fallout 3 by James that her favorite verse from the Bible is Revelations 21:6. I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give unto him that is athirst of the fountain of the water of life freely. Her faith, coupled with her desire to see humanity prosper, would be the driving factor behind her life's mission, to bring clean drinking water, the water of life, to the capital, Wasteland. Together with a team of scientists, Catherine would see about turning the Jefferson Memorial into a revolutionary water purification system. Dubbed Project Purity, the plant would draw water in from the nearby tidal basin, scrub it clean from any lingering radiation and contaminants, and then it would be distributed throughout the capital Wasteland using armed caravans. A successful Project Purity could provide millions of gallons of clean drinking water to people, erasing at least one of these side effects of the Great War. Project Purity was a very ambitious project. Almost too ambitious. From the jump, small-scale tests provided consistent results, but replicating those results at a higher output with the scavenged equipment they had proved challenging. Even worse, the presence of hostile supermutants in the area threatened to halt the project early on. It was only thanks to Owen Lyon's interest in the project that the team would manage to continue, under Brotherhood protection of course. Along with the increased Brotherhood presence, eventual news of Catherine's pregnancy also contributed to the group's increased morale. They were given another reason to make this project work. They had a future generation to provide for. Catherine, especially, insisted on spending all day in the lab working. Even at James' behest, Catherine would keep tinkering and testing. Now, of course, once the baby was born, the team would have to slow down on their work, as one of their hardest working members would be out of commission, taking care of the baby for some time. What wasn't expected, though, was Catherine's complications following her childbirth. Shortly after birthing the Lone Wanderer, Catherine went into cardiac arrest. The team did the best they could with what they had, but Catherine would not make it. She would pass away shortly after. Without Catherine, Project Purity would slowly grind to a halt. Catherine's expertise, dedication, and working hours couldn't be replaced. And that's the big reason why I've got her on this list. Perhaps if she had survived, James, the team, and her could have gotten the Purifier online 19 years before its eventual activation at the climax of Fallout 3. Catherine was the alpha and omega of Project Purity. She was its beginning, and she was its end. Number 2. Dr. Madison Lee. Next on this list is a colleague of Catherine's and a recurring character from Fallout 3 and 4. First found in Rivet City during the Scientific Pursuits main quest, Dr. Madison Lee is nearly 2 decades removed from her time working on Project Purity. It would be in Rivet City that Dr. Lee would join the Rivet City Council and become the settlement's lead scientist. Operating out of her science lab, Lee and her small team primarily conducted experiments using hydroponics and portable nuclear fusion power. And while she was quite successful, capable of growing radiation-free produce, her true scientific calling would be elsewhere. In 2277, James traveled to Rivet City and tried to convince Lee to return with him to Project Purity. She would decline, as it meant giving up the last 20 years of her work. Sometime later, however, after the Lone Wanderer freed James from his virtual prison in Vault 112, she would relent, and Project Purity was now back on the menu. However, it would appear that it was a limited time special, as shortly after, Colonel Autumn's Enclave would commandeer the project, with the events resulting in the deaths of Janice Kaplinski and James. This monumental setback would bring her, the Lone Wanderer, and the remnants of her team to the front gate of the Citadel. She would, out of necessity, be working with the Brotherhood once more. Now, despite Madison's weariness of the Brotherhood, she would actually be the one to solve a major problem for them. You see, when the Brotherhood arrived at the Citadel in the 2250s, they discovered the failed pre-war military project known as Liberty Prime. But just like those before them, the Brotherhood of Steel weren't able to effectively power the hulking bot. For 20 years, Scribe Rothschild would compile failure after failure when it came to coming up with a solution to Liberty Prime's immense power consumption conundrum. If only they knew someone who had just spent the last 20 years researching portable nuclear fusion power. Well, when Lee and others showed up at their doorstep, it was like a prayer was answered. With not much else to do in the Brotherhood HQ, Lee and her team helped resolve Liberty Prime's power problem. With Liberty Prime online thanks to Lee, the Brotherhood could commence their attacks on the Enclave and take back Project Purity. However, as soon as the fighting had died down, Lee determined that due to a potential sabotage, increasing amounts of pressure was building up in the holding tanks. If the purifier wasn't immediately turned on, the entire memorial could explode. The Lone Wanderer would risk their life activating Project Purity and finishing what their parents had started. But Madison's story doesn't end there. With Project Purity online and in Brotherhood control, Dr. Madison Lee began to grow tired of Owen Lyon's group. Where Lee wanted to do work that could benefit all of humanity, the Steel wanted to control and weaponize her research. And so, after acquiring Lyon's permission, she left behind the capital Wasteland and went north to the Commonwealth in search of a rumored scientific community. Eventually, Madison made contact with the Institute, and Father would accept her into their ranks. Madison could finally conduct her research in peace, free from Brotherhood influence. Surrounded by some of the most advanced technology that she had ever seen, Madison quickly immersed herself in her work. Believing that the group was truly acting in humanity's best interests, she would turn a blind eye to the faction's selfish, reclusive, and secretive ways. She believed that her work would someday be used to help people. It would take less than 10 years for Madison to become the head of the Institute's Advanced Systems Division. Here she would use her past nuclear fusion and hydroponics research and apply it to other fields of physics. Advanced Systems would be tasked with developing the Institute laser weapons, synth relay grenades, the Institute's nuclear reactor, and young Sean. What, are you trying to tell me that making radiation-free fruit doesn't have any crossover with genetically crafting a child? Come on, man. Despite Madison's work once again involving the creation of weapons, she would seem to enjoy her position in the Institute. One of her colleagues, Rosalind Orman, was the best physicist she's ever met, constantly working, even skipping sleep to do so. I wonder if Rosalind reminds her of anyone. And even though Lee initially showed hesitancy regarding the creation of a child synth, she would seem to have bonded with the boy, spending more and more time in her lab with the young Sean. She even befriended the lead scientist of the FEV labs, Dr. Brian Virgil. Though, in a tragic turn of events, Father announced that there was an accident in the FEV labs, an accident which, according to Father, killed Virgil. Madison, being the good person and friend that she is, wished to aid the Institute with an investigation into the accident. Her request would be denied. This wouldn't sit right with her. Learning of Virgil's true fate would be Madison's final straw when it came to working with the Institute. Disenfranchised by all the secrets and lack of actually helping anyone on the surface, Madison would leave for the Boston airport, ready to once again offer aid to the Brotherhood of Steel. Unfortunately, though, her expertise would once again be needed to bring a rebuilt Liberty Prime back online. It would seem that no matter how hard she tried, Madison would be known as the scientist behind the Brotherhood's deadliest war machine. Number 3. Elder Elijah. And what do you know, the next person on this list is a former Brotherhood of Steel member themselves. How about that, eh? We've only got a few degrees of separation between Elder Elijah and the Lone Wanderer. I believe the former Elder for the Mojave Brotherhood of Steel chapter is one of the greatest post-war minds in Fallout. With that being said, he does use his wits and intelligence to do more harm than good. But we're not here to judge morality. We're here to discuss their achievements, capabilities, and impact on the Wasteland. Once a scribe at the Lost Hills Brotherhood of Steel, Elijah rapidly rose through the ranks and was the only known scribe to achieve the rank of Elder. This was likely thanks to his genius and ability to dissect the mechanisms of any device purely through looking at it. Elijah's knack for understanding technology made him a valued member of the Brotherhood. But his desire to improve and iterate upon recovered technology ostracized him from his group. This wasn't the Brotherhood way. The Brotherhood was about collecting and preserving old world tech, not making their own versions. Elijah's desire to develop ethically questionable weapons was the final straw. The Elder Council would send Elijah along with a contingent of Brotherhood scribes, knights, and paladins eastwards, towards the Mojave Wasteland. Ordered to secure the pre-war marvel, the Hoover Dam, Elijah would instead take more interest in a nearby solar power plant, ordering his people to set up shop there instead. Despite being a leader, Elijah was really anything but. He would spend much of his time in isolation, focused on Helios 1. He would issue technology acquisition orders through terminals, avoiding as much face-to-face conversations as possible. As the new California Republic's presence in the Mojave increased, the NCR and Brotherhood began to butt heads. The NCR, in control of the Hoover Dam and McCarran Airport, wanted to secure more key locations. Elder Elijah, desperate to discover the plant's secrets, was determined to hold it. Outnumbered 20-1, Elijah came upon documentation mentioning that Helios 1 was actually housing an energy-based orbital weapon, Archimedes 2. However, before the weapon could be brought online, the NCR commenced their final assault on the facility. Operation Sunburst would see the defeat of the Mojave Brotherhood and the desertion of Elder Elijah. Elijah's only combat encounter would be a major loss. But that's okay, because we're not concerned with his military tactics. Where everyone believed that Elijah had left the Brotherhood, he instead believed that he was taking measures to save it. Elijah abandoned Helios 1 in search of old world treasures that could not only restart the Brotherhood, but the entire Wasteland. He would take on this journey alone. I think that's one of the more impressive things about Elijah. Despite being a bookworm loner, he's quite self-sufficient. Sure, he likely views other people as merely tools to get what he wants, but it is quite impressive that he managed to keep himself alive during his travels across the wastes. During his journey, he wound up at the Big Empty, where he would meet a courier, Ulysses. Ulysses told Elijah that the technology he seeks can be found at the Sierra Madre Resort and Casino. Elijah would need to prepare. Elijah would collect and reverse engineer explosive collars found at the Little Yangtze detention camp, as well as alter a faint radio broadcast that he determined was coming from the Sierra Madre. Elijah would leave the Big Empty, stopping at an abandoned Brotherhood of Steel bunker for some final preparations. A poisonous red cloud loomed over the Sierra Madre. Elijah would collect samples of the cloud to perform tests and analyses. With a final message recorded for the only person he cared about, Elijah embarked on his voyage to the Sierra Madre. It was everything he could have imagined. Finally, his grand plan for the Wasteland could be realized. The cloud could be weaponized to rove over the Mojave. Those who survived or resisted would be blasted with beams of light emitting from invulnerable holograms. Detractors could be subjugated using explosive collars. All required resources to make a perfect nation could come from the vending machines. A new wasteland, in Elijah's image, could be perfectly crafted. His desperate desire to improve and iterate upon post-war society would be witnessed by all. It would be time to begin again. Well, that would be the case if Elijah didn't accidentally trap himself in the heart of the casino. Using his explosive collars, Elijah would forcefully conscript hopeful treasure hunters to do his bidding. One team of hopefuls managed to get Elijah safely into the casino, but once they had died, Elijah found himself stuck, trapped in the confines of the Sierra Madre. Realistically, this probably only reinforced his loner behavior, eh? The moment he trusts a group of others for help, they get him stuck. That is truly unlucky, dude. With the Sierra Madre unwilling to let go of Elijah, the scribe-turned-elder-turned-ambitious supervillain accepted his fate. he would die alone in the Sierra Madre. Well, that would have been the case had his Nightkin slave not brought a new hopeful treasure hunter, one with a Pip-Boy 3000, to the Sierra Madre. Elijah's only chance at survival would require the courier to reach the vault, and Elijah would have to use his amazing people skills to convince the courier to join him in world domination. I'm telling you, Elijah had some mighty hefty goals, and was quite close to achieving them as well. His planning, his dedication, and his follow-through were all there. He almost ended the Mojave, NCR, Brotherhood, and the entire West Coast in one big move. His biggest flaw was definitely the lack of trustworthy, reliable, and willing allies. Had Elijah tossed a few more points into charisma, maybe him and Six are sitting atop Helios 1, sharing an ice-cold sunset sarsaparilla. Number 4. Piper Wright. This might be the entry where I lose you, but I wanted to include Piper in this list as a sort of dark horse pick. So far this list has been entirely composed of those with analytical and calculating minds. So in contrast, I wanted to highlight at least one character with a brilliant mind that one might gloss over at first. You know, someone with street smarts as opposed to scientific smarts. Piper is that character. Sure, while Piper is no scientist or technological savant, she has a deep caring for the people of the Wasteland and actively takes some pretty creative steps to better their lives. Piper grew up in a tiny little settlement way out in the Commonwealth. Her father was a member of the local militia. He was a noble man keeping families safe from mirelurks and raiders. One day, however, he turned up dead. Militia Captain Mayburn claimed that raiders must have got to him. Piper didn't buy it. And so Piper would commence her own investigation. After asking some key questions to the right people, it turned out that Mayburn had cut a deal with the raiders to leave their town gates open. Piper's father caught wind of this plot, and Mayburn killed him. When Piper brought this evidence to the mayor, he refused to listen. So, being the ever-so-crafty investigator, Piper made him listen. Piper went about plastering the town in wanted posters, swiftly turning public opinion against Mayburn. The town, with the mayor's approval, exiled Mayburn. The raiders who thought the gate would be wide open and the town easy pickings were met with a prepared defense. Piper, thanks to her investigation, had saved countless lives. Though the small settlement life wasn't for Piper. After her dad had died, Piper would become the primary caregiver for her sister, Nat. She needed to find a way to provide. And so the pair saved up as much as they could before booking passage to Diamond City. There, Piper would start her investigative journalist career and open Public Occurrences, the Commonwealth's only post-war newspaper. The nature of her work sees Piper getting into all sorts of trouble. One of the first articles she had ever published was about a cartel of caravans that were intentionally driving up the price of food in the city. Her article led to the boycott of those caravans. All was good. So, to celebrate, Piper went to the Dugout Inn for a drink. It was only after her first sips that she realized something about the drink was off, and that the bartender was not Vadim, but someone she didn't recognize. She quickly realized that her drink had been spiked with something. She needed to get whatever was in her system out. So she started chugging the only thing in reach, a still of moonshine. It worked. What was once in her was now out. Crisis averted due to some quick thinking. This wouldn't be the only time Piper needed to be quick-witted to survive. In her line of work, she would frequently wind up in all sorts of situations. Another near-death experience happened when Piper was investigating word of irradiated drinking water in Bunker Hill. She ended up following the Bunker Hill sewer line right into a Children of Adam compound. Piper would be discovered, captured, and prepared as a sacrifice to Adam. As she was about to be booted down a long sewer pipe, she quickly cried out, "Adam, he reveals himself." The children bought her dubious deception and inducted her into their group. Piper would manage to sneak away a few days later, and Bunker Hill security would tidy up the miscreants. Piper knows that these escapades come with the territory. She knows that in order to help people, reduce corruption, and find the truth, she needs to put herself into dangerous situations. And for the most part, she does this entirely by herself. Her investigative nature sometimes comes off as nosy and annoying, leaving her with not many allies, or friends for that matter. In fact, by the start of Fallout 4, she's been banished from Diamond City. Her attitude in regards to helping people, her ability to escape even the stickiest of situations and live to tell the tale, are the primary reasons why she makes this list. She's devoted to providing society with the truth, even if it means a lonely existence for herself. And number 5, Doc Henry. We're going to round this list off with yet another doctor. In his youth, Doc Henry was a cynical Enclave scientist working on cybergenetics research with a specialization in human and canine neuroscience. He also had a side project that aimed to cure supermutants of their supermutantism, though it was still very much a work in progress. Eventually, due to some disagreements with the leadership, Henry left the Enclave, and it was a good thing too, as shortly after his departure, the Chosen One blew up the Enclave oil rig. With a working mind to offer, Henry opened a clinic in the NCR's capital, the NCR. There he would continue his research, crafting blueprints for a cybernetic canine guard dog, and looking for someone to do a bit of field work. This would catch the attention of the town's local crime boss, who wanted to secure some valuable Enclave information. But Henry's life in the NCR was lacking some fulfillment, and as the NCR and Brotherhood began cracking down on former Enclave members, Henry decided to go east. The man would join up with a caravan, his destination, the Mojave Wasteland. Henry wound up settling in Jacobstown, becoming one of the only humans allowed access to the town. And while the lab he built was no Enclave facility, it would be here that he would have the privacy, resources, and safety to do some good old supermutanarian work. His primary focus would include researching Nightkin Stealth Boy usage and developing a cure for their schizophrenia. Though at the start of New Vegas, he's been a bit preoccupied by the local Night Stalker population. It appears that some of them have developed a stealth mutation. Henry would employ the services of the Courier to investigate. After discovering the Night Stalkers developed the mutation through chewing up a stealth boy, Henry would be able to take a crucial next step with regards to finding a cure for the Nightkin's affliction. An important but risky experiment using the Stealth Boy Mark II would need to be performed. Lily would agree to be the guinea pig. Following the experiment, Henry would come away with some useful data and end up being a lot closer to a Nightkin cure than he ever was before. 4 of the 6 New Vegas endings for Jacobstown mention that Doc Henry was able to manufacture a cure for Nightkin schizophrenia. Finally, after decades of exhibiting severe mental instabilities, the often forgotten Nightkin could finally be at rest. Flocks of Nightkin and supermutants would migrate to Jacobstown, with the town becoming a haven for the ostracized mutants. All thanks to the actions of a former Enclave doctor. How about that for some irony, eh? The Enclave wanted to eradicate all supermutants, but it was a former Enclave scientist that saved them. And that is 5 of the greatest post-war minds in Fallout. Each of the characters on this list progressed, or attempted to progress society in some big way. A scientist who wished to provide clean drinking water to all. A doctor who tried for decades to better the wastes, only to lay destruction to it, twice. A former Brotherhood elder who did his very best to reset the primitive wasteland world. A lonely journalist risking her life to give knowledge to the people. And a doctor whose work focused on bettering the lives of those on society's outermost fringes. Thank you for listening. If you liked the video, be sure to share and subscribe. Have a good rest of your day. Cheers.
All those innocent people up there, dying. And here I am surrounded by technology that could make their lives better. Yet we hide down here and insulate ourselves from everything and everyone. It's not right. It's not right.